Guess who got brands talking? brandlive.co.za.
Okay, you're listening to The Weekly with me, Samm Marshall. And as you know, it's a regular feature on the show that we engage with authors. We have a conversation with them about their books and their stories. As you know, they are really some of the most interesting people on the planet. Their idea of it, or the ability to be able to tell a story for me, is something really amazing. And this morning, I'm speaking to somebody, and you won't believe the story. It's actually a true story. It's based on a Vervet Monkey who comes to live with the maternal grandmother of the author Penny Haw. Penny joins me in studio, and the book was illustrated by Petra Langner, and it's called Nico. And one of the interesting things about this book, is that, funny enough, Penny writes a story, but I honestly believe, before I even engage with Penny, that I'm going to say this, I'm going to be honest about it. All the characters, from the dogs to the deer to the polecat, they could have all been the lead in this story, because they are all dynamic and amazing creatures that have really incredible personalities, and we're going to talk about it. Penny, good morning. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you, Sam. It's great to be here. I feel very privileged.
Am I wrong when I say that, and we'll give our listeners a bit of a background to the story, or at least a brief. But is it fair to say that any of this could have been about the polecat, it could have been about the deer, it could have been about any of the horses or the stompy or any of them?
I guess so. I mean, yeah.
There's some really strong characters here.
Yeah. I guess if you love animals like I do, and like my grandmother Alice Kirk did, you get to know them like you do with people, and they do have characters. If you're an animal lover, I think you realize that animals are incredible individuals. You get to know them, you get to know what irritates them and what delights them and what their quirks are. So yes, you're probably right.
So let's maybe take one step back and just get our listeners to understand what we're talking about. A quick synopsis of the book.
Okay, so this is based on a true story of my grandmother, who was a farmer in KwaZulu-Natal, and she loved animals. She, like many farmers do, but she was particularly fond of animals, and she had a wonderful way with animals. She just knew how to treat them so that they were very calm. They got on with one another, and people would bring her animals that were unwell or had been abandoned. And so she had a history of being something of an animal whisperer. And one of the animals that was brought to her was a baby Vervet Monkey. And Alice had her rules with taking in wild animals was that she would take them in and look after them, but that they should be able to reintegrate into the wild.
I was going to ask you that question somewhere down the line. But
yeah.
I'm glad that you're touching on it.
Yeah, she didn't want to have a wild animal for the sake of having an exotic pet. That was a rule. So she would take them in, and mostly the animals came from the area. So invariably, once they were healthy enough, once they were old enough and were independent, they'd start going back into the wild, and they'd come back to the farmhouse less and less, and eventually they would integrate with their own species. They would find a mate, they would join a troop or a herd or whatever their species was, and they'd go away. And Alice would be sad, but on the other hand, she had achieved what she set out to achieve. But this story is about a Vervet Monkey who decided that Alice and the rest of the animals in the farmyard were his new troop, and he never left.
There's something amazing about Nico, and I don't know if it is. I mean, obviously a Vervet Monkey is cute, but the idea, there's a couple of things that tells you this monkey is very, very different. How he interacts with the other animals, how he is protective of the other animals, how he is inquisitive, and maybe many people argue that that's kind of the nature of animals, but I feel there's something really special about Nico. When Alice told you the stories, did you get that sense too? Because as I'm talking to you now, there's a strange thing where I think one of Jack's friends, Mr. Judd, stays over, and there's this interaction, and Mr. Judd doesn't want to actually acknowledge that Nico is sitting at the table, and they are so used to Nico sitting at the table and having his cup of runny maize meal and whatever they organize for him, and he's part of that family. When she used to tell you the stories, did she explain to you that there was something special about him?
She did. She said that she loved all sorts of animals. I mean, she was always surrounded by plenty of cats and dogs. She's just but she said that the primate, there was a special connection with a primate because perhaps he just had a level of intelligence that she hadn't experienced with the other animals. That there was a connection there, and certainly. The stories that she told me, which I retell in the book, there was something incredibly special about her relationship eventually with Nico. I mean, to begin with, as you've read the story, it took a while for Nico and her to connect because she had the difficulty of feeling that she didn't want him to be entirely dependent on her because she felt that
you've mentioned it, but you're talking about it again. Your grandmother really believed that once they were healed, they should go back to their natural habitat.
Yes. No, that's what she wanted. And and I think I say it in the book, she would say to me, you would never want to be caged or tied up.
That was one of the rules of a place, that animals were allowed to come and go.
Yes. And the important thing was that she should be able to integrate them all. And the tension in the book is obviously some of the dogs were not as easily didn't. Is
it Rushy or Rusky?
Rusky. Yes.
Rusky.
Rusky was took a while to realize that Nico was not to be hunted. You know. But I think well, certainly I know that Nico was very, very special.
So there was a couple of moments in the book where I'm gasping because I've had a dog, a beautiful dog, a Labrador by the name of Kai, and he had sensibilities that I believe as the owner made him completely unique to any other dog. And I wondered how much of it was real and how much your grandmother, added a lot of these things to kind of to make it more magical, and I'll quantify it in a moment. There's this thing after the hunt at the pond, and I don't want to give away too much because I want people to go and buy the book and read it. But there's this interaction at the pond where there's this group hunting operation that fails with the ducks, right? And so you said his name was Rusky. Rusky then wants to attack Nico.
Yes.
It then happens that his partner, who's a similar dog, steps in between Rusky and Nico.
Yes.
And that was one thing where I thought, maybe that is true, or maybe that was added on to make it more magical. Then there's the way you describe the group operation and the failure of dealing with the ducks. Then there are just little things in how Nico has this magical relationship with Stompy after he's the one pup, unfortunately, who's the weakest of the litter, and he's brought into the home, and they then kind of Alison nurses him back to health.
Yes.
But at the same time, he forms a very special bond with Nico. And that bond, the way you describe Nico putting his paws around him and holding him and hugging him, but some of the story is just is crazy magical.
Well, I think if you watch Vervet Monkeys, you'll see that's protecting. In fact, there's an amazing clip that's been doing the rounds recently. I think it's from a Vervet Monkey foundation somewhere in KZN of a young Vervet monkey that was taken in by some organization. This is very recent, and it had a broken limb or something, and they filmed it when they released it back to its troop. And the way the mother and the rest of the troop welcomed this baby back. So it had been gone for several weeks. It was filmed on the roof. I mean, you should Google it. It's the most amazing thing. I think I put it on the Nico Facebook page of these Vervet monkeys welcoming the little one back with these hugs and these whole. I mean, it really is like that, and I I believed everything my grandmother told me. And
it also, in some weird way, Penny, this book makes you think of animals a little bit differently. And I know that anybody who's ever owned a dog, a cat, or a parrot for that matter, because you also talk about Polly.
Yeah.
And how Polly got, was it Alice or you in trouble?
No, it was Alice, yes.
Got Alice into trouble by kind of repeating the nasty things that Alice would say about potential visitors. But you do create a world that I don't think a lot of people really think of animals with personality.
Yeah.
And even the way you describe... in the one chapter, I think, Smelly But Sweet,
Yes.
where you talk about the new edition, which is a polecat, and how they eventually play, because the house is their domain.
Yes.
And how they interact with each other, and the rules around not biting each other's ears and not drawing blood and those kind of things makes you look at animals in a different way. And I'm not sure if we're vigilant enough around animals to actually see their personalities.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and also the fact that they interact from different species.
Yeah,
and my belief of that is that if you have them in an environment where they don't threaten one another, so they're fed and they're allowed to retreat into their own space. There's no, they're not. They can run away if they want to. So they learn to interact in a way in a non-threatening way. The way children play on a playground until a bully pushes them off the swing, and then the whole game goes. It will end up in tears. Yeah. And I mean that certainly the polecat and the wildcat and a monkey and a Scottish terrier and a stompie, a mixed breed dog running around the passage. It sounds unbelievable, but it's absolutely not unbelievable.
Sure. And I think you set the scene, because the thing for me at the beginning is when you explain about Alice, this is somebody who's had an incredible spirit for animals. She preferred animals over human beings, because you even describe in the book that animals have the ability to be funny, and they have the ability to love and the ability to show stuff. And I think not a lot of us really. Let me be fair. I think a lot of us do. A lot of us, the way you describe it, though, it's like, even when you talk about Polly, how she used to chase Alice's sisters around the house, and how she would put her beak down onto the floor and start running after them, and you're comparing it then to a schoolyard bully. Yeah. I think you've created such a humanistic feeling towards animals. Yeah,
I think, and Alice taught me that. I have to say that if Alice and I were the same age, we would have been best friends. I absolutely idolized her. She taught me to love books as well as animals, stories, and it's that I'm as much of an animal lover as she is. Unfortunately, I don't live on a farm and I don't gather them all around me. But it's to me, animals are so much a part of my life. Yeah. I don't see them as separate entities in a sense. I mean, it sounds silly, but I'm a great animal lover, and I think that she passed that on to me, so I could relate to that. So maybe that's what
the other thing that you also paint very beautifully is how profiled her love for animals were in the community. Everybody knew, and it wasn't just locally that they would bring animals to her. I mean, the very reason, I don't know if I want to give it away, but maybe we should talk about even how Nico gets to end up being with Alice in the first place. The dedication that those people in the Hella Hella village knew that there was this lady who lived in this part of KZN, was 2 days away, that would be able to look after this animal. Talks to you that Alice must have been an incredible person.
She had a reputation. Some years later, In fact, I was a small child at the time. She ended up with a meerkat who, and the meerkats are not indigenous to that area, but this meerkat had been given to someone in KwaZulu-Natal. And they, people who get wild animals and expect to keep them as pets and who don't understand animals invariably end up with trouble on their hands. And somehow this meerkat was the only person that would be able to look after it was Alice Kirk. It ended up, it came from the meerkat came from the Northern Cape somewhere, and she ended up, and that's another story that I would love to tell about the meerkat.
That's probably going to end up being a book. What was the meerkat's name?
Nunu, because they're all the same as the polecat.
Yeah, the same as the polecat. Okay, we're about to take an ad break on the weekly. When we come back, we're going to have a chat to Penny about what inspired her to actually write the story, and it's quite an interesting story, because I think until her son mentioned it to her, she might have never written Nico. So we take an ad break. We're back after this.
Thank you.
Have you ever thought about the power of social media? Social media has the power to make your business grow. Yeah. Why don't you let us manage your social media? Because our business is to see your business grow. Visit us at www.beastownmedia.co.za.
You're listening to brandlive.co.za, an industry first in the world of internet radio. Not only are we an internet radio station, we are an internet radio platform for your brand. So why not expose your brand to potentially thousands of listeners and improve your customer relationships and brand equity with podcasts and live broadcasts? Be sure to check brandlive.co.za for more information. brandlive.co.za, harnessing the power of internet radio. You're listening to Brand Live.
Okay, welcome back. You're listening to The Weekly with me, Samm Marshall. And this morning we are talking to Penny Haw. She's written a book called Nico, the Tale of a Vervet Monkey on an African Farm, illustrated beautifully by Petra Langner. We're going to have a chat about the illustrations, because I even think that is interesting. And if you haven't seen the book, it's these beautiful pencil-like type sketches that really tell the story with incredible detail. Just something that comes to mind is the image of Mr. Judd, and just the way it was sketched was I can actually picture him, and I think many of us have actually met or seen a Mr. Judd. Penny, this was never going to be, was it always going to be a story, or did it need your son to tell you how amazing the story is and was to get you into to even put pen to paper?
Yes, well, I've been a writer all my life. I'm a journalist. I'm a freelance journalist. So writing is what I do. And of course, I think almost everyone in the media thinks at some point about, do I have a book in me? But it terrified the life out of me, the thought of writing a book. And so Alice told me the stories of Nico, and when my son never knew Alice, but when my son was born, I told him the stories of Nico. So Nico was essentially a legend that lived through from Alice to me to my son. And about 4 years ago, I guess, I was talking to my son about a book I was reading and was enthusiastic about it. And he said to me, Mom, you should write a book about Nico. He said, you really should tell other people the stories about Nico. And I thought, I should. Those stories are all in my head. It's not like, okay, well, what will the plot be? They're all there. So, it was my son. And I thought, and I also felt brave enough to do it because I thought, it's my grandmother's story. So if it falls flat, I'll blame her.
But the other thing that we don't get to do, which you did exquisitely, is to keep the tradition of a story alive.
Yes.
That will get passed on to generations of Haws and everybody else who is on this family tree. And I want to know personally, don't you feel that is an accomplishment?
I must say I feel very proud. I got very good response from my mother. Was particularly delighted. Of course, she did tell me the parts that I'd left out, and I do remember Nico did this, and you should have put that in. But she helped me fill in the gaps because she knew him. But certainly my nieces and nephews, they never knew the story, so it's new to them as well. And what has been absolutely wonderful is people in the Natal Midlands, in the Lefafa Valley near Ikopo, that knew my grandmother, have all been so interested in it and contacted me and said to me, "Oh, we remember this and we remember that, and she does this and she." So it's actually been phenomenal, the response from people in the area.
What was this emotional? Because I can only imagine you can't write a story like this and not think back and smile a little or feel a little bit choked up in certain parts, because the story is emotionally well crafted.
Yeah, thank you.
The characters, as I mentioned at the beginning, have very strong personalities. Nico is lovely as the lead. But for me, when you wrote this, what was that feeling like when you then finally said to a family member who also shared that story? What was that experience like? Was there a moment like, I can't believe I put it down, I don't know what they're going to say? Where was Penny when you finally handed it over to somebody who could share the story with you?
Yeah, for me, I remember when I gave it to my mother, I said, I hope, I called Alice Gammy. I hope Gammy would be proud. I just wanted, I would have loved to been able to give it to my grandmother and say, I wrote your story. As a writer, there's a sense of working on something, and then when you see the final product, being a bit disappointed because you put so much of yourself and you invest so much, and it's so close to your heart. But Nico has been one thing that I have just been absolutely delighted with, and I think it's because it's so beautifully illustrated by Petra. I mean,
talk to me about those illustrations, because I think they could be actual works of art on their own. They could be in a library somewhere or in a gallery, or
she's phenomenal. Yeah. Well, I have to credit the publishers for finding an illustrator. They took the story and they found Petra, and they sent me several the works of several different illustrators. What do you think of this? And I eventually got to a point where I just was getting impatient, and I was thinking, just make a choice now. And then they found Petra, and I have to say, I am so pleased that they took the time to find the right illustrator. So. Petra is a farmer's wife, can you believe it, in Williston in the Northern Cape. I haven't met her. She was sent the manuscript with paragraphs that were highlighted and said, this is what we want to illustrate. And then she and I and the publisher and the designers worked together. So, but I think what's amazing about her is that she loves animals, and she
you can see it.
Yeah,
you can actually see it. Yeah. I mean, majority of these animals, they've got like smiles on their faces, and they look peaceful and they look content, and she's able to just with great detail catch even what the animals were thinking as you read along and you look at the image. You must be very. Is Petra somebody you're going to be working with on the other books?
I would absolutely love to. I would really love to. But
That's not your decision.
No, I would love to. She's absolutely delightful, and as I say, it was just so wonderful that they found the right person, because if I think back on it now, I think none of the other illustrations, not that there was anything wrong with them,
but they weren't the right fit.
No, that's it. Because it's not a story where the animals talk.
Yeah,
they're animals, They're animals, but the characters have to come out, and
So normally towards the end of the show, we like our authors to find passages in their books that kind of jump out at them and that they can read for us a little. But before we get there, obviously Nico is the central theme, and the story revolves around him, and you've created great animals with fantastic personalities. Who else did you when you put it down, you went like, he's really interesting. I think Nunu's interesting. For me, Nunu's interesting. I like the first time that Bobcat gets to meet Nico, because even the way Bobcat peers into the box, but her sensitivity to Nico and Alice, and that kind of dynamic that you sketch in the book is interesting for me, because these animals seem, and I did talk about it at the beginning, but they seem to be hyper aware of the environment, hyper aware of each other. Is it because they're all rescued in some way?
Not necessarily. I guess for Bobcat and certainly the dogs, when Nico arrived, he brought with him unfamiliar smells. He made weird sounds. He was coming into their territory, and so they would in a sense have to, and there is that sense of being threatened initially. So that's why I say that Alice just had this amazing calming effect, that she just knew when to say, I'll keep you apart, and when to say, get to know each other. Because even with when Nunu was introduced, if you remember, Nico grabbed his tail and got bitten. And so but Alice let it happen, because she knew that had to happen for Nico to realize, okay, he doesn't like to have his tail grabbed. The cats were used to Nico grabbing their tails. They would just turn around and roll on their backs, and so I think that does that answer your question? Sorry,
you do, but you know, there's something else that begs a follow-up question. There's actually two. The first thing is that there's a lot of education that happens in this book, especially the way you describe what people think of polecats and what they actually are like in their real environments. In actual fact, they're not aggressive. And that's the one thing. And so I wanted to find out, was the educational aspect very important for you? You wanted to kind of set the record straight on some stuff, especially if it's driven towards children?
Yes, definitely. I mean, for me, the important thing was that I was very conscious of the fact that I didn't want to encourage kids to think it's cool to have vervet monkeys as pets. That was very important to me, and I struggled with that, because I thought, of course he's cute. He is cute, and even though Alice didn't set out for him to become a pet, he decided that that's where he lived.
Well, in all fairness, Jack describes Alice to Mr. Judd as Alice's hairy kid.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I thought was funny.
Yeah. So that was important to me. It was also important for me to let kids know that animals that have a bad rap very often only have a bad rap because they're handled wrong. They're. So, I mean, like the polecat.
And then that information then gets spread like it's truth. In actual fact, it's fake news.
Yeah. Fake skunk news.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Then the other follow-up question I wanted to find out was, and I think it's such an important thing. I don't want to give it away, but I need to find a way to structure it. There is an interesting dynamic, and maybe you'll pick up on what I'm saying, but there's an interesting dynamic between even Alice and Nico. Because, I'll just give it away. Nico doesn't communicate with Alice in the traditional sense. And for her, at some point, she says, I wonder if I should take this personally.
Yeah.
Because he structurally has 3 sounds.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I wanted to kind of get a sense, because it felt for me as I read through the book that was still a big thing. I never before, I don't finish the last 2 chapters in any book before I do an interview. I like to read 80%, because in the past I used to give books away.
Okay.
And people then say like, hey, you destroyed the book for us. But this is something that is quite interesting. And you highlighted that he wasn't communicating with her in the way that she's used to with the dogs and everybody else. And
I think the hardest part for her was seeing how he communicated with every other creature in the farmyard, but not her. And yet he knew that she was the one who was, but you have to read to the end of the book, but
which I will after this.
And I think I said earlier that the difficulty for Alice initially was that she felt like she couldn't push herself onto him because she wanted him to. she wanted him to adapt to the environment, but to leave if he wanted to. So she felt that she had to let him come to her, and I think it was part of Alice's magic. She never, it was like, I'll wait for you to be ready.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, when she saw how close he was to all the other animals, she couldn't help but be jealous, actually. Like, hey, what about me?
The other thing, and it's quite interesting that you say that, but in many ways, it would have been difficult for her not to have some kind of, I'm not saying she can't have it with any of the other animals, but she's literally taking this baby monkey. She has to put a bottle in his mouth. So there's a very humanistic element there. She's got to feed him.
Yes.
And so it's almost unfair to think that she would be able at the end of that process to let him go, very similar to all the other animals, because it's not the same type of care or the same kind of system. It's very up close and personal.
Yes, except that you might remember from that was that when Stompy was put in the box,
box too,
her,
yes.
that when they were apart initially, Nico was quite distressed
because he wouldn't make the noises.
Yeah, he wanted his friend back. So his and because Vervet monkeys essentially grow up on their mother's chests and on their backs and that, it's about holding another furry creature.
And that's how Stompy got into the box in the first place, because they weren't able to generate the right amount of body heat.
Yes, yeah. So I guess that the feeding part and the initial stages of the feeding part was almost a mechanical thing for Nico. It was just like, hey, put me back with my puppy, Yeah. So. Yeah.
The mere fact that Nico thinks he owns a puppy.
That's his best friend.
Who he also rides
and
occasionally.
And he owns several kittens,
Yeah. And I think that story I'm not going to give away, because I think there's quite an interesting story with Nico and the kitten. But that's quite interesting because, and this comes back to the point, he's so observant. He understood that a lot of the other ones were being taken away.
Yeah.
In the end, though, when you asked your grandmother about Nico and about his life with her, how would she describe him? How would she describe Nico? Do you think of Nico as a monkey or as another part of the family in many ways?
He was always a monkey, but okay. I actually think, if my grandmother was honest, he was probably her best friend in the world. To be honest, I mean, they were together for a long time.
Yeah.
He was buried on the farm. He has a tomb on the farm with a view across the valley. I mean,
wow.
In fact, when we were in Zimbabwe a while ago, and we went to the Matopos to Cecil John Rhodes' burying place there, and when I was there, I think I said to my son and husband, this reminds me of when Nico was born. He was like a statesman,
Okay, so you found your favorite chapter or lines out of the book. Can we hear you read it?
All right. So I'm going to read from a section. I'll read the duck chase, right?
Okay.
You happy with that? Okay.
Cool.
So just to put it into context, it's a point of where Nico and Stompy are essentially teenagers, and they've begun romping around the farmyard. And Alice has had to keep an eye on, because Rusky and Zana are the two big dogs, and they're
actually hunting dogs.
They're borzois. They're bred to hunt.
Yeah.
And Alice had a breeding pair. She did very well breeding them.
You actually describe in the book, that's actually how she made a name for herself, because of these two magnificent dogs.
Yeah, but they were bred in Russia in the 1600s as hunting dogs. So their instinct was to hunt. So they were a threat to Nico. So, okay. Stompy and Nico frolicked in the garden and explored the farmyard further and further afield every day. Rusky and Zana, as far as I could see, kept their distance, lurking watchfully in the shadows. Nico's quick movements and excited chatter must have been tantalizing for them. It was difficult, I expected, for the borzois to see the monkey as anything other than prey that should be hunted. I kept an eye on them as I went about my business on the farm, but knew it wouldn't always be possible to police them when around the monkey. Fortunately, Nico was, I assured myself, alert, and with the advantage of being able to jump and climb quickly, would surely be safe from the jaws of the big dogs. One day, however, I realized I'd underestimated just how sly Rusky was. Zana surprised me too. Accompanied by the gang, I'd taken a late afternoon walk to the small dam not far from the house. When Smiler spotted a pair of wild ducks leisurely swimming about, he plunged into the water and swam towards them. It was an old game that he and Mary, the Scottish Terrier, played with the birds. He'd paddle up quietly to them while she'd run circles around the pond, barking wildly. When Smiler got too close for comfort, the ducks would squawk loudly and angrily take off and land back in the water a few meters away. When they came too close to dry land, Mary would storm at them from the water's edge, while the old setter, Smiler, continued to paddle furiously towards them. The game usually went on for 5 to 10 minutes, by which time the old setter would be too tired to swim anymore, and the ducks would paddle away safely. This time, however, Nico and Stompy got in the act as well. Following Smiler's lead, Stompy plunged into the dam in high excitement and swam furiously behind the ducks. Nico decided otherwise. He paused, took in the scene unfolding before him, and realized how the game worked. Quick as the flick of a willy wagtail's tail, he bounded up a willow tree, scampered along a branch hanging over the water directly above the ducks. Clutching several strands of the willow's slender stems with one hand, the monkey swung low and, suspended immediately above their feathery heads, snatched at the unsuspecting ducks with the other hand as they paddled below. Detecting the swishing close above their heads, the ducks looked up and, catching sight of this unusual and unexpected new member of the hunting team, complained in renewed alarm, "Squawk, squawk, squawk!" Distracted by the monkey, the ducks didn't realize that Stompy had swum right up to them. The mongrel opened his jaws and lunged for one of the ducks, grabbing its tail feathers in his mouth. Shocked, the ducks both dived under the water, one dragging Stompy with it. Now it was the pup's turn to be shocked. Momentarily beneath the water, the terrier splattered to the surface and looked around confused. The ducks were still beneath the water, but where? A short distance away, Smiler paddled in circles round the dam, looking for the birds. Suddenly, I saw his eyes widen in panic and consternation. He propelled himself upwards as far out of the water as possible, legs flailing in fright. One of the ducks had accidentally risen up from directly below Smiler, connecting his belly with its head. The duck's unexpected emergence gave the old dog the fright of his life.
That for me is so amazing, and it's so vivid. I can actually see it. Is this an audiobook? Are there plans to put in an audiobook?
I hope so, yes. But I don't know of those plans yet. I shall speak to the publisher.
So now you've written Nico. It's you. By the way, you're in Johannesburg. You're Cape Town based. Tell us quickly why you're here.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm here for the Kingsmead Book Fair on Saturday. And I've been doing some readings to schools. I must say that's been an unexpected delight of writing this book. I didn't realize that that's what would be called on, is to read to schools. But I have been reading to schools. I've been reading to kids of across Cape Town and here, and it's an absolute delight.
And the way you read it is you're telling this story, and I know I've read it, but it sounds so completely different and animated. When you kind of recall it and read it to us. So you're at the Kingsmead Book Fair. Yes. The book has been out how long?
It was released in August last year.
August last year, so it's got a bit of a year spell. But there seems to be a momentum around it now, and people are really engaging with it. Yeah. Does that force you to think about the next book? Are you going to write the next book? Has Gammy left you with any other stories?
Well, Gammy has left me with lots of stories. Whether publishers will be interested or not, I'm not sure. In
but
fact,
there could be Nuno the Meerkat.
Yeah, there could be. I mean, for me, writing about animals kind of comes naturally. I love it, and I'm trying some other things, but even when I'm writing about other things, in fact, I'm working with a writers group, and I'm working on an adult manuscript, and my my friends in the writers group said to me the other day, the dog is the most interesting character in this book, and I thought I'll take that as a compliment.
Which dog, by the way?
Well, actually, it's a fictional dog.
Oh.
It's a Labrador. Yeah.
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 So you're on this tour for the book. You're at the Kingsmead Book Fair, which is massive, by the way. Audiences are
Forward to
great.
it. Yeah.
What is the best part been after writing the book? I mean, is it reading to kids, seeing their face light up as they? And I think you've even given me a little bit of a new perspective on reading this book. I think I'm going to enjoy reading this book to my children.
Well, I actually wrote it specifically that because it's aimed at 9 to 12-year-olds. But I wrote it so that each chapter is like a bedtime story. So
Yeah.
my idea was that you could read a chapter a night to smaller children as parents. And then they would want to know what was happening next, but you'd get a sense of a beginning and an end within that chapter. The reading to the kids has been absolutely delightful, and the questions that the kids ask, that for me has been the biggest delight. It's wonderful.
Something I always want to know from authors, because writing funny is a very difficult thing, and especially getting other people to think it's funny. What was, because there are quite some funny moments, and I think the illustrations help pointing it out.
Yeah.
My funniest moment is Nico in bed or in box with the kitten.
With the cat.
And he's always constantly either looking for one if he's not with Stompy or always just trying to sleep next to someone or something. How did you tackle the idea of humor? Because did you just read it and reference it against people and say, guys, is it funny? Or did you hope that the reader, because it's its own journey, it brings up its own emotions, would find the funny wherever they could find it?
I think I just remembered how Alice told me the story. So she was obviously a witty person. Yeah. I really the way that she told me the stories was really how I wrote it. And obviously I worked on the choreography of to make sure that to try and put people at the let them be there and see it happening. But it's my beta readers were my son and husband, and when I gave the manuscript to my husband, he read the whole thing, and he came upstairs to my office and he had tears in his eyes, and I thought, it worked.
He could have just been immensely proud of you. He could have just like, my wife has done something amazing.
Thank you, Sam. Yeah. No, and my son is now a scientist. He's a marine biologist, but he helped me to make sure that the biology was right on it. So they were really great with it. They encouraged
So
me.
you talk about the sequences, the choreography, but I mean, you've got all these years of writing. You've written about animals before and all of those kinds of stuff, but there's also a pace to this book that really doesn't sit too long in an environment. It moves quite quickly from one chapter to the other. It gets into scenes quite quickly. The descriptions, as vivid as they are, when you talk about, for example, the pond, you have this idea of this pond and this tree that the illustrations help. Talk to me about pace, because sometimes with all the interviews, and I've interviewed over 700 authors now, some of them struggle with pace sometimes. Some of them struggle with getting the chemistry right from the beginning, in the middle, and the end. You say that you just allowed the way your grandmother told you to kind of just write that story.
Yeah.
But then that story has to go to somebody who's never heard that story before, your publisher and the various other people.
Yeah. Yeah, I was very conscious of the fact that the story needed to engage children at all times, and I think it helped that I was working on each chapter to try and make it a self-contained thing, and not to. And we were talking earlier about the lessons in the book, and I didn't want it to be a lecture either, but I wanted to bring that awareness. So I think the reason it moved fast is because I was very conscious of losing the attention of of a young audience who, let's face it, have all sorts of distractions around them.
Yeah.
So to engage them, and for me, the greatest delight will be for kids to read this and to think, I want to read another book like this, and go and find something else, and because they've enjoyed it. So.
What has the reaction been from the public? I mean, you talked about a Facebook page. You actually
Yes.
set up a Facebook page for Nico.
Yes. Yeah, it's been good. It's been good. I've had really good responses from a lot of teachers who have kind of used it, and I have noticed that the adults that introduce it to the children are generally animal lovers. You know, people who love animals, and they introduce it to their kids, and it's kind of taken off from there. I've had great response. I've had great response from an older audience, like people in their 70s or 80s, and who have known and loved animals, and who I've had a great response. Yeah.
And I'll say this, and I think the reason why is because there's such a great feel-good factor to this book. It is. And maybe it's a strange thing to say, but it's been written with such good intentions behind it that a good intentions leaps off the page, because I can see why a teacher would be interested. It deals with issues of companionship, of friendship, of love, tolerance, patience. We talked about it earlier. Just the fact that the animals knew the rules about no drawing blood, that you're allowed to playfully bite each other, and stuff like that. There seems to be so many really good things about the book.
Yeah. Sam, one of the great moments of this book was near Christmas. I was in KwaZulu-Natal, and there's a little bookshop in Howick, and they'd been doing really well with sales, so they asked me to come and do a reading there. And I went there, and after the reading, one of the members of the audience was a former teacher of mine. She was my teacher in those days, standard 2, so grade 4. So I would have been 8 or 9. She was my school teacher, and she realized it was so delightful to see her. I must say, she didn't look a year older than what I remember her all those years ago. She looked fabulous, but she was so delighted with this book. She's buying it for her great grandchildren.
Wow.
But she said to me, that what she really loved about the book was how I handled the loss, because there's a section, without giving anything away, and because I don't tiptoe around the fact that when you love animals, you have to endure the loss, because they will die before you. And to me, that was a huge compliment. And I learned that from Alice. She said to me, I remember being in tears about the loss of some pet or other, and she said to me, you make a choice in your life. You either have the love of pets throughout your life, or you decide, I'm not going to suffer the loss, and I just won't. I won't put myself out there to love an animal, and I try to express that. So, yeah, it's all those things about loving animals and being compassionate, but also being realistic.
But structurally, I think we also struggle as parents to articulate loss to our children, and we kind of wrap it up in a way that is palatable for them, we think.
Yeah.
So, if it's Boo Boo, the hamster, he's moved on to a better place and all of that kind of stuff. And we use the kind of language that leaves the children wondering, where's this better place? I'd like to go and find. I'd like to go and find Boo Boo. So the reaction has really been great. Do you think that there's enough other stories to continue with another Nico story, or has Nico now been put to bed? It feels to me like Nico could have been mischievous and catch on a lot more than just.
Oh, Nico. By the end of this book, Nico's not even halfway through his life. So there's a whole series of books on Nico.
Did we just get you to commit that there's another Nico book?
Well, I would love to write another Nico book.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll see another Nico book in our lifetime.
I hope so. Yes.
Okay. That's Penny Haw. She
Thank
is in studio with us, and she's talking about Nico, the tale of a Vervet Monkey on an African farm. It's illustrated beautifully by Petra Langner. She's here for the Kingsmead Book Festival. It's a massive book festival. If you've never been to it, they have the most interesting discussions. And I think what I love about it is that there's a lot of book festivals that don't really have the child at the center of the idea of why it was established in the first place. With Penny, where can people go find their own copies? Is it available in all good bookstores?
Yes, it is. It's available in all good bookstores. Yes.
And I know you've created a Facebook page. Where can
Yeah.
people follow, interact with you more, share their stories, share their ideas?
The Facebook page and the Instagram and Twitter is at Nicko Monkey or at Penny Haw. That's Haw. So I'm in both places, and I'd love to hear from people. And if they can't find the book, be in touch, and I shall point them in the right direction.
So you're here in Johannesburg. Any other tours that you'll be traveling with the book over the next couple of months, or is that still in the offering and working?
I will be at the Franschhoek youth program. That's next week, which comes before the Franschhoek Literary Festival. So I'll be there, and then thereafter, I've been doing readings at school. So I'm very open. To
And you'll
literary-
continue with
I'll
those.
Carry on doing that. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you.
Penny Haw, thank you very much for
Thank
joining me
you,
on the
Sam.
weekly.
Thank you very much.
You're listening to brandlive.co.za.